Hello and welcome back to the Sports Sermon. I'm Dylan Staggy.
I'm Jason Gotti.
I'm Dave Majors.
And I'm John Majors.
And we are back today for more college football previews. So we've done every single league besides the SEC now. So today we're starting off with the SEC East. Tomorrow will be the SEC West. And then on Thursday we will post our college football playoff and award races preview. So, let's start it off right away with Florida. We're going to talk about last year, offensive and defensive thoughts, give a ceiling and a floor for this year and their record, and then give a record prediction. So, let's start off with last year's Florida team with Dan. What do you have on that?
Florida, well, they went 9-4 last year, finished 6-2 in the conference, and won the East Division. Went on to the Outback Bowl against Iowa and won. They returned 13 total starters, 9 on offense, 4 on defense. On offense, they lose David Sharp and Austin Appleby. On defense, they lose Marcel Harris, Jared Davis, Alex Anzalone, Marcus May, Quincy Wilson, and Jalen Tabor. So, Jason, what do you think about the Gators?
So the overall formula last year relied on a great defense to win games and the offense just to be good enough. But as we saw, that really didn't work against the good teams, like the really good teams on the slate. They were 116th in the nation in total offense and averaged 24 points per game, and that just won't cut it anymore if Florida wants to go from being great to be the SEC champion. I think that's what they're really hoping for. Felipe Franks was supposed to take over, but now he's got a massive challenger behind him. He was one of the star recruits out of 2016. They kept him with his red shirt, and now he's got to fight his early growing pains and is ready to roll. He's got to hold off Notre Dame transfer Malik Zaire, along with Luke Del Rio and Kyle Trask at the quarterback spot. I think all four have a chance to get playing time if they struggle, as Florida's made it clear they don't really have a number one yet. Besides them, the Gator offense seems to always want to run the ball and really just power teams down, but it never really seems to work. But Jordan Scarlett, LaMichael Pirine, and Mark Thompson form a veteran trio if the line can do its job. But really, the receiving corps has potential to be amazing, but there's a lot of question marks. Can Antonio Callaway stay out of trouble? Can Dre Massey return 100% from his knee injury? And can the quarterback really stretch the field? The experience is there and the speed's there, but is the talent, and the talent's good enough to be better, but it's a matter of if they'll do it. Offensively, defensively, Nick Washington should be the next star NFL prospect at the safety spot. Leading tackler Marcel Harris is back at the other safety.
He's done for the year.
Did he get hurt already?
Yeah, he's hurt. He's out for the year.
Oh, I did not catch that. Okay, well then they got a spot at safety. Some shifting around should keep the overall production on the defense from taking a tumble. But Dan, like you mentioned, they really got to deal with losing Caleb Brantley and Gerard Davis and Tease Tabor and Quincy Wilson. And so, but I mean, the big part is really their pass rush. If they can get a pass rush going, if CeCe Jefferson, Jabari Zuniga can get people in the quarterback's way, then I think they're going to be okay, and they've got to have good backups to form a good rotation. I think the defense won't be like they were last year, but they'll be all right. I have them at 8-4. I'm intrigued about the QB battle, really, between Zaire and Franks. I hope Franks can keep his job, but I think Zaire came in for a reason. They didn't recruit him for no reason. So I have them at 8-4. I think they lose to Michigan. I think they split it with Texas A&M or LSU, and I think they lose to Georgia and Florida State. I think their ceiling is 10-2, and I think they'd lose to Michigan and Florida State there. And I think their floor would be 6-6 with no QB consistency if the defense can't get off the field. And then my MVP is hopefully Antonio Callaway, who's the team's best offensive player, and he's the most dangerous weapon, most overall talent, and he's really just a game changer. But he can't be relied on if he can't stay on the field. So he's my MVP though if he can stay on the field.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for Florida this year is replacing all the guys on defense, especially at cornerback with Tease Tabor and Quincy Wilson gone. Like Jason said, a couple guys on the defensive line with the potential to step in and be great, with CeCe Jefferson and Jabari Zuniga. On the offensive side, I think Zaire gets the job at quarterback. Antonio Callaway, like Jason mentioned, he'll be great at receiver this year. And at tailback, Jordan Scarlett, coming off an 889-yard season, he'll be the number one guy there. But this year, the SEC East isn't particularly strong, but Florida does have a couple of really tough non-conference games in Michigan and Florida State, so I like them at 8-4 this year.
I like Florida, and here's why. I like Malik Zaire, and I like what he does. He said early on, when he was going to transfer, that he wanted to go somewhere that he'd start. He's not going to go to Florida for the hell of it. I think he's going to be a starter, and he will thrive. And he has good guys to help him out. with Jordan Scarlett and Antonio Callaway. Like Jason said, Callaway just needs to stay out of trouble and get on the field. He's a deep threat and good with screens. Also, what's going to help out Malik Zaire, they have 4 offensive linemen returning, and one of them is Martez Ivy, who's the #1 recruit out of high school a few years ago. I really like this Florida team. Their defense will thrive. Especially, I like CeCe Jefferson. He's going to have a breakout year. But Jim McElwain, he's doing a great job on the recruiting trail as well and just doing a good job. I have this team going 10-2 and 6-2 in the conference. Big wins coming against Michigan and Florida State, and they lose to LSU and Georgia.
I agree with John here. I like Florida. I think Malik will ball. He's never turned the ball over in his collegiate career. Antonio Callaway, he will lead the best receiving corps in the SEC. On defense, they lose their top 5 tacklers, but I still think they have the second best defensive line and the second best defensive backfield in the SEC. Jabari Zuniga and CeCe Jefferson will lead the way on the defensive line, and Duke Dawson will have a good year in the defensive backfield. So, I have them at 10-2, 7-1 in the conference, and they win the East, losing to LSU and Florida State.
I cannot give the job to Zaire when you've got a guy like Felipe Franks who's 6'6", 220, and is a pro-style QB
Who has not done anything.
Zaire hasn't done anything either. He's barely played last year. It was Kaiser's team when he got in, and when he came in, he was fine, but it wasn't like he was a star that was like phenomenal. He couldn't even win his own job.
Brian Kelly put him in a package that he never should have, and it was terrible. When Zaire ran the entire offense, he thrived and did a fantastic job. Zaire is undefeated as a starter against LSU and Texas, 2 really good programs. Also, he beat Virginia, and he's never committed to turnover in his college career. Never.
That's fine.
You
I'm
need
not
to take
saying
care of
he's
the ball.
bad.
You've talked about how the defense will stop people, right? You've said they'll stop people?
Mhm.
Okay, well, if Zaire's not turning the ball over and your defense is stopping people, you're going to win a lot of games.
I just think I don't think you can just overlook Franks. I'm not saying that Zaire won't win the job. I'm
Franks
saying
is
you
going to
can't
push
look
him to be
over
better.
Franks.
That's just me.
I think Franks. After the spring game, he is the front runner. That has came out and it said that Franks is the front runner right now, going into. And so
Zaire wasn't on campus yet.
that's fine. I'm not saying that he's going to win it. I'm saying I'm just intrigued to see who will win and will it change throughout the year. Say Franks does get to start. If they get killed by Michigan, do they pull the plug then? Do they let him play? I'm just intrigued. I don't have anything like saying either way it's going to be this guy is all I'm saying. I think it's going to be 2 different guys where Franks is a very pro-style quarterback. Zaire is very dynamic in 2 different ways. I'm just saying I'm intrigued to watch it, but at the same time, that quarterback controversy usually doesn't end well. When there's a quarterback competition, it creates competition, but it also creates teams splitting. Oh, I want this guy. Oh, I want this guy. And the team tends to split. I'm not 100% on Florida because there is a quarterback competition. And not that Luke Del Rio is going to get the start, but he did play last year and probably has some guys in the locker room that are pushing for him. So just in general, I think because there's so many competent guys that can play the quarterback position at Florida, it could divide the team.
Yeah, Jim McElwain must not have been happy with his quarterback situation because they were still really highly recruiting graduate transfer quarterbacks. They needed a guy this year because they had potential this year. So I'm saying Malik Zaire is going to be the guy.
I would not be surprised if he is. I just don't think it's easy. I don't think you can I just like, okay, it can't be Franks. It's got to be there. Is all I'm saying. And I'm excited to watch. I think that's a good storyline. Besides, though, Alabama's going to go 12-0 and all that crap from the SEC. I think it's a fun storyline to keep an eye on. I guess.
Yeah. And you're right. It could cause trouble for them going on throughout the year.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
All right, let's move on to the Georgia Bulldogs. Last year they went 8-5, finished 4-4 in the conference, and 3rd in the East Division. They returned 17 total starters, 7 on offense, 10 on defense. And on offense, they lose Isaiah McKenzie and Brandon Cubuano. On defense, they lose Maurice Smith. So, Jason, what do you think about the Bulldogs?
So they had the absolute best backfield in college football with Sonny. How do you say it? Is it
Sony Michel.
Sonny Michel, there we go, and Nick Chubb. And those two could have easily started in the NFL. And almost all the 2016 rushing production returns, it's just a matter of can Eason or Fromm get the job done, and can the passing attack really just do more? The star recruit of Kirby Smart's first class, Jacob Eason, has his ups and downs. He was great at times in the clutch, but he has to hold off a hard charge from this year's freshman phenom, Jake Fromm. No matter what, Georgia will have an elite talent under center. It's just similar to Florida where you don't know which one. I think people assume it's going to be Eason because, like Dan's mentioned a lot of times, and it was his guy last year. He was number one coming out of his class, and he's definitely a very good quarterback. But I think Fromm's there, and I think it's going to be a good quarterback battle to keep an eye on. But the big thing about Georgia's offense is the line. That's what's going to decide this team. If the line can hold him up, I think Georgia has star potential and can potentially make the college football playoff if they can upset Alabama. But if they don't, there is definitely room for them to be very much an underperformer. I'm buying into it on the offensive end. Defensively, they were good. They struggled in big games, but in general, they were good. 14 of the top 15 tacklers returned, including the top 5 and 28 of the 29 sacks are back. The line's good. Jonathan Ledbetter at one end spot, and then they've got Trent Thompson to hopefully crank it up as well. And the inside linebackers of Rokon Smith and Natrez Patrick should be all-star caliber as they finish 1 and 2 in tackles. All in all, I have them going 10-2, winning the SEC East. I think Eason/Fromm will be phenomenal this year. I think it's just going to depend on the line. Ceiling 11-1, floor 7-5 if the quarterback play can't go and the line can't hold him up. And my MVP is whichever quarterback stays on / Nick Chubb, obviously. But I think because Sony Michel is there, I think he might not be that valuable. Or not as valuable as a quarterback, so I have those two kind of slashed.
Chubb has a lot of injury problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This year for Florida, obviously Eason, I think he'll come back, get the starting job, and he'll be great this season. At the running back position, obviously they are loaded with Chubb and Michel. Jason said the offensive line is a big X factor this year. Also the receivers, though. Not a lot of guys for Eason to throw to. If they can be great, Georgia, like Jason said, also has a chance to make the college football playoff. Last year, 87th nationally in total offense. They need to improve there. On the defensive side, though, 16th nationally in total defense, and no really weak spot on the defensive side. A deep defensive line, and the secondary, not as much star power, but still a lot of solid guys. I have 9-3 for Georgia this year, though. They have 5 really tough road games at Notre Dame, Tennessee, Florida basically because the game's in Jacksonville, Auburn, and Georgia Tech. I say they get 2 or 3 of those, and if Nick Chubb stays healthy, I think he's the MVP.
Wait, do you have them winning the division?
Yes, I do, over Florida.
Like you guys said, I really like this Georgia team. Kirby Smart has done a great job in his first 2 years, and I'm banking on Jacob Eason being the quarterback. I just think he has so much more potential than Jake Fromm. Has a year under his belt in the offense. I just think he's going to thrive this year. And he's got safety valves in Nick Chubb and Sony Michel as his running backs. Just hand the ball off to them when he's in trouble. As you guys said, the offensive line is going to be the X factor. I agree 100% there. If Eason's getting sacked, then he's going to have a rough year and create a lot of turnovers. But this offensive line has a lot of potential as well, too. 10 starters back on defense, and all of them are juniors and seniors. That is crucial. You have a lot of experience, and that's going to help them out in big games, especially at Notre Dame, I think. But I have them going 10-2 and 7-1, and in the conference, I have losses coming to Notre Dame and at Auburn, but they beat Florida, so they will win the East Division.
All right. I am also a big fan of Georgia this year. Nothing much else to say, really. Was 15th in yards allowed last year, and I think they'll be one of the top defenses in the SEC and maybe the country, of course, returning 10 starters there. So I have them at 10-2, 6-2 in the conference, and finishing second in the division, and losing to Auburn and Florida. So let's move on to Kentucky. As last year they went 7-6, 4-6, 4-4 in the conference, and finished 4th in the East Division. They went on to the Taxslayer Bowl and lost to Georgia Tech. They returned 17 total starters, 8 on offense, 9 on defense. On offense, they lose Jeff Badgett, Ryan Timmons, and Stanley Boone Williams. On defense, they lose Marcus McWilson and Blake McCain. So, Jason, what do you think about Kentucky?
So, the offense was so good running the ball, and they should be just as explosive, if not more impressive, despite the loss of top runner Boone Williams and the most dangerous receiver, Jeff Badgett. It all starts with an improved line, even though they lost their center, with 4 starters back to a group that's outstanding at paving the way for the ground game. There's depth, versatility, and size, and this is the year everything that's been building towards up front should finally come together. Steven Johnson came into his own as a dual-threat QB over the second half of the season, and highlighted by the performance everyone remembers over Louisville, and he'll have plenty of help around him. The combination of Benjamin Snell and rising back Shaheem King should keep the whole Thunder and Lightning thing going behind the veteran line to replace Boone Williams in the backfield. I like the Kentucky offense. But the defense. The running game is the team's strength, but the linebacking corps might not be all that far behind as the season goes on. I love Jordan Jones, an all-around killer on the outside, while Courtney Love in the middle and Josh Allen on other sides of Jones should be among the team's leading tacklers. The pass rush should shine with Denzel Ware back in his hybrid role, but the rest of the line has to be stronger against the run, especially in the interior. But on the plus side, the tackles are deep with a good rotation and nice size. So I like Kentucky. I have them at 7-5. I think their ceiling's 8-4 if they can beat Louisville. I think their floor is 5-7, and I think that their MVP is Benjamin Snell, just because he cranked out 3 straight 100-yard games during a key stretch against Mississippi State, Missouri, and Georgia, and handled the ball 38 times, 192 yards, and 2 touchdowns against the Tigers, Missouri, and he's 5'11", 223, so he has the body to be a workhorse, and he had Boone Williams, obviously, last year, but with decent speed, he's going to bring a lot of power with offset by speed, not speed offset by power, and I think he'll really be the tone setter for the Kentucky offense.
Yeah, Kentucky has a lot of really good pieces, but behind that, they got to find more depth and really get these guys to all gel together. 2016 freshman All-American Benny Snell takes over the starting job at running back. Steven Johnson is going to take complete ownership of the quarterback position after 7 wins last year out of 11 as the number 1 quarterback. The offensive line will be really nice. The receiver is a question, though. Someone's got to replace Jeff Badett. The secondary has Mike Edwards at safety. He's an all-SEC contender this year, along with Chris Westry and Derek Balti. At linebacker, Jordan Jones had 109 tackles last year. And outside linebackers Denzel Ware and Josh Allen should do a lot on the pass rush this year. The defensive line still needs a little bit of help, though. So I like Kentucky at 7-5 this year.
I'm not a huge fan of Kentucky. Just the eye test. Watching them play last year and watching their spring game, I'm not high on Kentucky. But they do have all juniors and seniors returning on defense, which could help them. But they have a tough schedule as well. Steven Johnson will be the guy in their MVP. But I have them going 5-7 and 2-6 in conference. I'm not high on them. I'm not impressed. I think they'll lose a lot of games this year. And most of their wins last year against tough teams were very close, and I think they got kind of lucky in some of those games, and they'll lose those this year.
Yeah, I think Kentucky will be all right. Benny Snell, like you guys said, I think he'll have a good year. After last year, he had to split snap, and he still had over 1,000 yards last year. Jordan Jones, I think he'll ball after having 11.5 tackles for loss last year. So I have them at 6-6, 2-6 in the conference, finishing 5th in the East. And yeah, so let's move on to Missouri. As last year they went 4-8, 2-6 in the conference, finished last in the East Division. They returned 15 total starters, 10 on offense, 5 on defense. On offense, they only lose Sean Culkin. On defense, they lose Donovan Newsom, Charles Harris, Michael Shear, and Arion Penton. So Jason, what do you think about the Tigers?
So, Missouri, QB Drew Lock blew up last year, throwing for almost 3,400 yards and 23 touchdowns, but he only completed 55% of his passes, but he's it. There's no real depth behind him. With his backup from last year, Marvin Sanders, he transferred to Virginia. So it's really only Drew Lock at the quarterback spot. The receiving corps has been a bit inconsistent, but it returns loaded with the top 4 targets back, led by Jamon Moore on the outside. The group is deep, fast, and versatile to go along with a terrific group of running backs. And 1,000-yard back, Damaria Crockett is the top option, with the top 3 backs returning. And best of all 5 starters are back up front for a line that paved the way for close to 5 yards per carry and allowed just 14 sacks. Defensively, the pass rush did not miss a beat, but like Dan said, Charles Harris is gone, along with top tackler Donovan Newsom. However, it's a veteran group returning, and especially among the safeties. The corner situation is iffy with both starters gone, but the combination of Ronald Perkins, Cam Hilton, and Anthony Sherrill should shine at safety. Logan Cheadle has seen enough time at corner to be okay, but there's athleticism and wheels to fill in the gaps. Brandon Lee, Eric Beisel, and Joey Burkett all saw plenty of action, but they need help from the line that should revolve around 325-pounder AJ Logan on the inside. On the outside, with Harris gone, Marcella Frazier has to grow into the new playmaker and hopefully get some production. I think this team's going to be pretty average. I think they've got stars in different places, but not enough around them. I like them at 6-6, ceiling 7-5, Florida 4-8, finishing 4th, right below Kentucky. And I think their MVP is Drew Lock. I know he's a bit inconsistent, especially the game that a lot of people really knock him for against Florida when he only hit 4 of his 18 passes. But after that, he got going. He has a downfield arm. He's just mobile enough to not be stuck. And if he can start hitting at least 60% of his throws, he should be pretty good. He only connected on 55 last year, so not too much of an improvement, but still a substantial one.
Yeah, Missouri's offense is going to be great, but the defense is definitely not. This team would be a lot better in the Big 12 maybe. Last year, the scoring average improved by nearly 18 points. Drew Lock was great, 3,400 yards and 23 touchdowns last year. Him and Jamon Moore had a nice connection at the end of the year. 407 yards in the last 3 games for Moore. Demaria Crockett, a true freshman, got the 1,000 yards rushing last year, but the defensive side was bad, and they lose Charles Harris. So a lot of question marks on the defensive side. I'm not huge on Missouri this year. I think they finish 5-7 and do not make a bowl.
Yeah, you guys said everything you need to know about Missouri. Drew Lock is going to be the guy. 10 starters back on offense. Year 2 and with Barry Odom. I think they'll improve, but they won't be as good as what they're hoping for. 5-7, 1-7 in conference, and they'll finish 6th in the division.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Missouri. 122nd in yards allowed last year and lose 3 other top 4 tacklers. Not a huge fan of them, so I have them at 5-7, getting 1 win in the conference over Vanderbilt and finishing 6th in the East Division. So let's move on to the Gamecocks of South Carolina. As last year, they went 6-7, 3-5 in the conference, and finished 5th in the East Division. Went on to the Birmingham Bowl against South Florida and lost in overtime. On offense, they don't really lose anybody. On defense, they lose T.J. Holloman, Jonathan Walton, and Darius English. So, Jason, what do you think about the Gamecocks?
So QB Jake Bentley was very good over the second half of last season, but he needs to be more accurate and a consistent leader who makes everyone around him better. Every reception from last year is back. Like Dan said, they don't really lose much, so Bentley has a lot of options. Almost all of the running back rushing yards return, and North Carolina transfer Tyson Williams should provide more pop, but now someone has to block for him. 4 starters are back up front, and the South Carolina offensive line allowed 41 sacks and 102 tackles for loss, paving the way for just 3.7 yards per carry. I know 4 starters are back, but they have to be better than they were last year. Defensively, 5 of the top 9 tacklers are gone, but there's hope for the linebacking corps with 3-year starter Sky Moore coming back from a neck injury to go along with Bryson Allen Williams. If Moore is back to being himself, the overall production should take a big step up. The secondary returns good tacklers and safety DJ Smith and cornerback Chris Lamons to a veteran group, but they need help from more of a pass rush despite the loss of both starting ends. The tackles are back, but the depth overall across the front 4 is definitely a concern. I have their ceiling at 8 and 4, their floor at 5-7. I think they hit their floor of 5-7. I think it's a rough year for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, the Gamecocks are going to struggle on the defensive side. But for starting off with offense, Jake Bentley came in last year, started 7 games, 1,420 yards, 9 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, along with an upset of Tennessee. I think him and Deebo Samuel have a nice connection this year. Samuel had 783 receiving yards last year. Besides that, on the offense, I think the offense will be solid, but the defense is going to be a problem. Last year, 92nd in the nation in sacks with 21, and this year they have to replace both defensive ends. Like Jason mentioned, Sky Moore will be back, and the secondary brings back every starter, but still will not be fantastic. I like the Gamecocks to finish 6-6 this year.
I'm a little higher on South Carolina than you guys. I really like Will Muschamp and his defensive mind. I think he'll really help them out. 10 starters back on offense. Jake Bentley will be the guy. He's going to have a good year. The only guy they're losing on offense is their left guard. So I think their offensive line play is really going to help them and potentially score more points this year. I think their defense will step up, especially with Sky Moore being back. 3-time leading tackler on the team. Coming back from injury, I hope he picks up where he left off. He's a good player. Will Muschamp, I think they're on the rise. I think he's really going to help them out. I have them going 7-5, 4-4 in the division, or in the conference, and finishing 4th in the division. And I think they win Week 1 against NC State. Dan's really high on NC State. I think they will win that game.
I do not see that really. The ranked 118th in points per game. I think they could improve, though, returning 10 starters. Hayden Hurst, I'll give it to him. I think he's the best tight end in the SEC, with over 600 yards receiving last year. On defense, 43rd in points allowed. Bryson Allen Williams will lead the D. I give him an average to below D in the SEC. So I have them at 5-7, 3-5 in the conference, finishing 4th in the East Division, and getting wins over Missouri, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt in the conference. So let's move on to the Tennessee Volunteers. As last year they went 9-4, 4-4 in the conference, and finished 2nd in the East Division. They went on to the Music City Bowl against Nebraska and won. They returned 14 total starters, 7 on offense, 7 on defense. On offense, they lose Josh Dobbs, Alvin Kamara, Jalen Hurd, and Josh Malone. On defense, they lose Derek Barnett, Corey Vereen, LaTroy Lewis, and Malik Foreman. So, Jason, what do you think about the Volunteers?
So the ground attack turned out to be fine, mostly because Joshua Dobbs was Joshua Dobbs taking off. But new projected starting quarterback Quentin Dormati won't run like Dobbs did. Alvin Kamara left early, and Jalen Hurd, as we all know, is long gone. But John Kelly was the team's most effective running back for a long stretch, and a slew of young options are waiting to show what they can do to back him up. Now Jawan Jennings needs to grow into a number 1 target. The tight ends will likely be used even more under new offensive coordinator Larry Scott because he's coaching the tight ends too, but this means Ethan Walsh should play a bigger role and really helps take off some of the pressure for Dormati. Defensively, step 1 has got to be to find a pass rush without Derek Barnett. He was a stud last year, but getting behind the line wasn't an issue for the Vols. But the defensive ends not only have to generate more pressure, but also stay healthy. Rising star Jonathan Kongbo is already banged up. There's beef and talent on the inside, but they all have to start playing up. They all have to start playing up to their high school hype and not get hurt. There's a good group of linebackers returning with all of the key parts from late in the year back, but the main group of returning tacklers are in the secondary. Safety Todd Kelly is back after leading the team with 71 tackles, and the top 5 tacklers and 8 of the top 9 return. With this being said, I think they lose too much on offense with Kamara and Dobbs. I like them right average at 6-6, 5th in the conference. I think they lose to Missouri, which puts them below them, and I think their ceiling's 8-4, floor is at 4-8. I think they split that right in the middle at 6-6.
You know, I like Tennessee this year. The offensive line has improved a lot this offseason. If Dormati can come in and show that he can be the guy at quarterback, I think there's a lot of guys at running back and wide receiver that can come in and step up. A lot of potential on the offensive side. On the defensive side, though, they got to improve off last season. The run defense suffered 218.5 yards per game in 2016. They have to replace Derek Barnett, but they have a lot of guys coming back that were hurt last year on the defensive line. Kendall Vickers, Shai Tuttle, Khalil McKenzie, Kyle Phillips will all be healthy after missing spring drills this year. 2 of the more dynamic defensive backs in the SEC with Todd Kelly Jr. and Nigel Warrior. I think those guys will be great, and Tennessee finishes 8-4 this year. A lot of tough conference games at home. I think they win a good amount of those and finish 8-4.
I really like this Tennessee team. I really do. You guys said no Josh Dobbs for this year. I think that's going to help him. I was never impressed with Josh Dobbs and how he played. Yes, he was a good runner, but his passing game was very overrated. Butch Jones is also on the hot seat. If they want to keep their coach, they're going to have a good year. Watching the spring game, I liked Quentin Dormati. I really do. I think he's got a lot of potential, can run, throw, has great accuracy of what I saw. I think he'll pick up where Josh Dobbs left off and even better. Trey Smith, the top freshman in the country, is going to be on their offensive line, and he's really going to help protect Quentin Dormati. Also, they have a good defensive line. I think that's really going to help their defense move along. And Evan Berry, the best returner in the country, look for him to really pick up where he did last year and the year before. I'm going 9-3 and 5-3 in conference and finishing 3rd in the division. I just really like this Tennessee team, and if they want to keep their coach, they're going to have a good year.
All right. I have them at 8-4, 4-4 in the conference, finishing 3rd in the East Division. I don't really like. I mean, I think they will beat the teams that they should beat, like the teams that they are better than. But I don't think they beat a Florida or Georgia or Alabama or LSU because Butch Jones, he's 0-13 versus the top 10. I do not like that stat. And also losing 3 out of the top 4 receivers and 3 out of the top 4 rushers. So let's move on to the Vanderbilt Commodores. As last year they went 6-7, 3-5 in the conference, and finished 6th in the East Division. They went on to the Independence Bowl to the NC State Wolfpack and lost. They returned 16 total starters, 9 on offense, 7 on defense. They lose Will Holden on offense, and on defense they lose Zach Cunningham, Torrin McGaster, and Adam Butler. So, Jason, what do you think about the Commodores?
So when it comes to Vanderbilt, I don't know. I think they lost a lot, but the passing game has to improve. But it should be fine with all of the top targets back. The top 4 wide receivers return, along with the top 3 tight ends, and a young group that can't help but be better if Kyle Shermer keeps on improving after a strong final month of the season. The offensive line should be okay, especially at the guard spot, but they did lose, like Dan said, their top blockers in Will Holden and Barrett Guger, which is a problem. Pass protection is the big issue, but lasting away from the ground game shouldn't be a problem. Defensively, the defense is led by a loaded group of safeties that make a whole bunch of stops and are brilliant against the run. However, star corner Torrin McGaster is gone after a huge season, and now the secondary has to find ways to come up with more big plays. Adam Butler was the best pass rusher on a line that didn't generate much pressure in the backfield, but ends Nife Lolo and Jonathan Wynn are 2 veteran run stoppers for the front 3. Even with all of their returning experience, there's no replacing Zach Cunningham, who was undoubtedly the SEC's best defensive player last year. All he did was lead the conference with 125 tackles with key play after key play, time and time again. I mean, everyone remembers that Georgia game. But now the Commodores need to come up with more game changers and get a stronger pass rush. I don't like them. I think they're going to struggle. I have them at 4-8. I have them finishing last in the conference, and I think they're going to ceiling 7-5, floor 3-9. My MVP is Ralph Webb. He's 5'10", 202, and he followed up a 1,200-yard season with almost 1,300 yards and 13 touchdowns and averaged over a full yard more per carry. The 20-plus carry workhorse he never really wore down, and he ran for 100 yards or more in each of the final 3 games, hitting the century mark 7 times on the season. So yeah, like I said, not high, 4-8.
I like Vanderbilt a little more this year. I think they make a lot of improvements on the offensive side. Kyle Shermer struggled through the first 2/3 of the season, but down the stretch had a couple of nice games versus Ole Miss and Tennessee. The wide receivers were a lot better down the stretch too. Caleb Scott had a solid last 3 games with 227 yards, and Ralph Webb is coming back 1,283 yards last year, and he'll be great again this year. On the defensive side, though, a lot of questions losing Zach Cunningham. They took a small step back last year, but still finishing the top half of the SEC in yards and points. The secondary will be great again this year, but besides that, a lot of questions on the defensive side. I still like Vanderbilt to finish 6-6 this year, though.
Yeah, I'm not as high as you are on them. I'm with Jason here. I'm going 3-9, 0-8
Wow.
in the conference and finishing 7th in the division. They will definitely miss Zach Cunningham for sure. Their defense was pretty good last year. They're definitely going to miss him. Ralph Webb will be the MVP. Their senior starters on defense must step up if they want to be in that 6-6 range, like he said. 9 starters on offense, so they're really going to have to improve. They had 110th best overall offense last year. That is horrid. They need to be a lot better. And they have a really tough SEC schedule, with Alabama being their crossover game.
Yeah, I do not like Vanderbilt that much this year, finishing 109th in points per game, and offensive line the worst in the SEC by far. Ralph Webb, he should have a fine season after over 1,300 yards rushing last year. Defense should be all right, 36 in points per game last year, but they lose Zach Cunningham, who had 125 tackles and 16.5 titles for loss. So I have them at 4-8, 1-7 in the conference, and finishing last in the East Division. So let's move on to our surprise team of the year. Jason, what do you got?
It's not really that much of a surprise in our group, but I think in general mine's Georgia. I think they're having 10-2 and going to the SEC championship.
Yeah, I also had Georgia, but Vanderbilt, I said, would be 6-6. I think that's a little more surprise than you guys had.
I have Tennessee as my surprise team. I like Quentin Dormady. He's a better quarterback, in my opinion, than Josh Dobbs. He'll have a good year.
I have Florida as my surprise team. Malik will have a great year along with a great defense. Let's move on to our disappointing team. Jason, what do you got?
I just have Florida because I think a lot of the fans are pretty optimistic getting Zaire. I just don't think they'll be that good at 8-4.
Yeah, I'm not high on Florida this year. I think 8-4. A lot of expectations to come in and win the SEC East, especially with Zaire coming in. I don't think they get it done, though. I think Georgia wins the East.
My disappointing team's Vanderbilt. So many guys are returning, but they will finish last in the division.
I also have Vanderbilt. Not really much of a disappointment going 4-8 as they're kind of expected to do. But I still have them losing 2 more games than last year, so I have them as my disappointing team. So let's move on to our player who deserves a bigger spotlight. Jason, what do you got?
Mine is just Antonio Callaway. If he can stay on the field, he's going to be a star. And so I think not many people really know about him because he hasn't been able to stay on the field. So I like Antonio Callaway as my player who needs a bigger spotlight.
I'm going to say Jacob Eason. I think he'll be the guy for Georgia this year, and they will win the SEC East. Not a lot of people talking about him on the national stage, but they should because Georgia will win the East this year.
Mine is Sky Moore. I really like him. Linebacker out of South Carolina. He's their 3-time leading tackler on their team. Injured last year, but he will pick up where he left off for sure.
I have Jabari Zuniga of Florida. He'll have a breakout year coming off of 5 sacks and 3.5 tackles for loss. Let's move on to our coach on the hottest seat. Jason, what do you got?
Mine is Derek Mason. Sorry, he's 13-24 at Vanderbilt, and he succeeded the great James Franklin. I think this is his last.
I think him, along with Butch Jones, too, for Tennessee, a lot of expectations for them. If they fall apart, Butch Jones could see his job in trouble.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I'm high on Tennessee. I think they'll have a good year. But I have Mark Stoops from Kentucky. He'll be on the hot seat, but I don't know if they'll fire him.
I have Barry Odom of Missouri. They were good in 2013, 2014, but they've gone downhill a lot of late. Move on to the best pro prospect. Jason, what do you got?
Mine's Nick Chubb. I just don't think there's anything else to say. If he can stay healthy, he's a stud.
Yeah, I also have Nick Chubb. Not a lot of first-round talent in the East this year, but Nick Chubb, definitely a guy that, if he stays healthy, will be amazing.
Yeah, Nick Chubb, I have the same thing. If he stays healthy, it looks like he's getting better from that injury, squatting over 600 pounds.
Yeah, I like Nick Chubb, but I'll talk about somebody else here. Antonio Callaway, wide receiver of Florida. I think he'll have over 1,000 yards if they pass more than last year.
All right, so that'll end our SEC East preview. We've got SEC West tomorrow, and then we've got some fantasy football tight ends, where there's a lot of disagreements on that one. And then the big one, the college football playoff, which is going to be a great one. We'll talk about the Heisman, who wins the college football playoff, and all that. You guys know that I'm high on Florida State, and the take just keeps getting hotter. So that is what we've got coming up.
Yeah, a lot of good things coming up on the sports sermon. A lot of football coverage as it starts to become football season, heading into August now. So if you want to see all of that, hit the subscribe button. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, too. The link to that is in the description. And vote in our polls that we have every day. So thank you guys for listening, and we will see you tomorrow.